working as a school psychologist for 20 years and working in private practice for 21 years. I would like to just disclose first, I had my first book published a few months ago, and I do receive royalties from the sales from New Harbinger Publications. Before I get into my presentation, I would just like to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. Okay, so ACT was designed for use with adults, and the exercises and the metaphors were all designed to be used with adults, and they weren't designed to be used with children and adolescents. But we can't just use ACT with children and adolescents in the same way that we use it with adults, because I find that if we try to use it the same way that we use it with adults, kids and adolescents really just don't understand it and look quite confused and tend to not know what we're talking about. Firstly, our language needs to be developmentally appropriate. We just really need to make sure that the language that we're using is suitable for the age of the young person that we're using it with. ACT can look quite vague and quite ambiguous when it's used with adults. And so we really need to take care that we don't use ambiguous phrases that might be interpreted differently from the way that we mean them. And when I talk about ambiguous phrases, what I'm thinking of is like, it might be like a common phrase to say, I want to know what it's like to walk in your shoes. And I find that if we say that, the person might actually think that we literally mean, I want to put your shoes on and walk around in them, which might be quite worrying for some young people. So I'm just recommending in your work that you try not to use ambiguous phrases, and that you just try to use simple terms and just try to say exactly what you mean. When I first started using ACT, I was just using the traditional ACT metaphors that were designed for use with adults. And I'm thinking of like the hungry tiger. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the metaphor, the ACT metaphor of the hungry tiger. Basically, you say like, what would you do if a tiger's growling at you? And that metaphor was designed for use with adults. I don't use traditional ACT metaphors at all anymore, because I just find that young people don't know them. There's also one about like a donkey in a well, and what would you do if you were in quicksand? Most kids and adolescents don't understand those metaphors because they're not based on situations that they can relate to. So I just really recommend that if you want to use metaphors when you're using ACT, make up your own. Just try to make really kind of practical ones that are just based on everyday experiences that young people can relate to. If you're doing experiential exercises, and what I mean by an experiential exercise is where the client is actually experiencing something rather than just talking about things, you're actually taking them through an exercise where they get into contact with their thoughts and their feelings. Just make sure that they're developmentally appropriate for the age that you're using them with. And so we can use ACT with children and adolescents really to increase resilience. ACT is all about stepping out of one's comfort zone and really having a go, and actually trying to do things rather than avoiding things, even when they're difficult. And when we can teach young people to do things rather than avoiding them, especially when they're difficult, often what we find is that it often leads to an expansion of repertoire. And what I mean by that is, if we can teach young people to step out of their comfort zone and do things that are challenging, that are stressful, or that are hard for them, what I find is that often the young person will then start to do other things that also might be difficult for them. And so we start seeing a broadening and expansion of the behaviours and the sorts of situations that they're willing to try, which is really great. With all of the children and the adolescents that I work with, what I find through using ACT with them is that when they fear their thoughts and their feelings less, they start to become more independent. And very often the first change that I see in terms of their behavior is that they're less reliant on their parents. They start being able to self-soothe. So if they're feeling anxious, or if they're feeling worried, or if they're feeling sad, they're actually able to talk themselves through it rather than being dependent on a teacher or a parent to get them through things. And they start to have greater self-efficacy. They start to have a greater belief in their ability to be able to do things and to get themselves through challenging situations.
Are you ready?
And what I find is that ACT really increases tolerance for discomfort. What we're trying to do when we're using ACT is we're trying to increase willingness. And if we can help children and adolescents become more tolerant and tolerate discomfort and tolerate uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, and being able to get through that rather than falling apart and rather than having to avoid those thoughts and feelings, then that might actually mediate resilience and help them to become more resilient. I just want to briefly take you through the ACT stance. The first thing that's really the core of ACT, really the heart of ACT, and this is probably one of the things that I love most about ACT, is that the ACT stance is all about trying ACT yourself, trying out ACT in your own life first, and seeing how it works for you, seeing how you experience it, and then using it with your clients. I personally recommend that you don't ever try and introduce an exercise to a client that you haven't actually tried out yourself. You'll have much, much more credibility, and you'll be able to build rapport better if you can actually say, hey, I want to suggest this exercise to you. I actually tried this myself and I found this really, really helpful. That will give you more buy-in with your clients. Young people are credibility is really, really important to young people in particular, and they'll see you as being much more credible if you can say, hey, I've tried this out myself, and I found it helpful. So if you like ACT, if you're interested in ACT, if you haven't used ACT with your clients before, try it out in your own life and see how it works for you, see how it feels. The language that we use with all our clients, so if we're working with children and adolescents and their parents, we see them as our equal. We don't put ourselves up on a pedestal as superior to our clients. So we're not up here as the expert that has this perfect life that doesn't have any problems or difficulties, and our clients down here. Not at all. The ACT stance is very much about the client is your equal. And so what does this look like in sessions where you're using ACT? So all exercises are optional, so you can present them to children and adolescents and their parents. You can say, I'd like to invite you to participate in an exercise, or I've got this really cool exercise, really like to teach it to you if you'd like to, if you'd be willing to have a go at it. But just really stressing everything's optional. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to have a go at. And I recommend providing a choice of exercises. I find that children are more likely to agree to trying out an exercise if you provide a choice. If you only offer them one, then they might say, no, I don't want to do that, or they might say, that sounds boring, or I don't feel like that. And so I recommend giving a choice of two exercises, saying, I've got this exercise and this is what this involves. If you'd like, we could try that. Or if you don't want to do that, I've got this other exercise, and you could explain that. And then you could say, would you be willing to try one of those? the act stance is very much, as I was just saying before, but that the act stance is not saying, I have this perfect life and I don't have any difficulties. The act stance is very much about sharing your own experiences of using ACT in your own life. Now, the experiences that you share should always be appropriate for disclosure, and they should also be appropriate for the age of the client that you're sharing them with. So I like to share with clients that I get quite nervous about public speaking, and I get quite nervous before doing presentations. My mind might tell me that you might forget that everything you've prepared, you might go blank, or you might not be able to answer a question that someone has. And so I might share with a client, oh, I use this exercise of use this strategy of thanking my mind when it tells me that I'm not going to do a great job. So again, just sharing your own experiences, again, just appropriate for disclosure. And if you're not comfortable sharing experiences from your own life, you absolutely don't have to. Just if you're comfortable with it, or you might like to just share something really neutral. So I often just share with my clients, I might share with them that I like to bake. And if I'm trying out like a new recipe for a cake, I might get really worried that I might make a mistake and muck it up, and it might not turn out very well. So I might just share something really, really neutral like that. The next thing is that we don't try to sell ACT. So we don't say to clients, ACT's absolutely fantastic. I promise, if you just try this, I promise it's going to help you. It's like the best thing ever. We're not even trying to convince a client. And along with that, we want to respect the client's experience. And so if you do it in exercise with a client and a client tells you that wasn't helpful, or I wasn't able to imagine that, we really want to be respectful of that. And we don't want to argue with the client about their experience. The client is an expert about their experiences. They know their own mind really, really well, because they've been living with their own mind for such a long time. And so we don't want to try and change the client's experience of anything, or try and convince them. And so that just leads me to creative hopelessness, which is something that is part of case conceptualization that I'm going to get to shortly. And so creative hopelessness is just an acknowledgement by the client that the things that they're trying to do to control or avoid or get rid of the problem or difficulty aren't working. So we just looking for an acknowledgement, and what that might look like is the client might be telling you, you might ask them, like, what are some strategies that you've tried in the past? And the client might just be, saying to you, oh gosh, nothing that I've done to try and help me with this problem is working. And so when that happens inside, I'm kind of doing like a big yay or yes, great. We've got creative hopelessness here. I'm hearing that acknowledgement from the client that what they're doing isn't working. And so when I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, this person is going to be a really, really great candidate for ACT. It sounds like they're going to be open to hearing perhaps some new suggestions that might be quite different from what they've tried in the past. Okay, so I did my first ACT training course in 2007, and I found it really, really hard to understand. First, to understand ACT, I went on to do a PhD in ACT for adolescents as compulsory part of 9th grade school curricula. And I was very fortunate to be supervised by Louise Hayes. And look, for many years, I was using the traditional, the ACT Hexaflex, which is a model of ACT designed by Steve Hayes, Kirk Strozahl and Kelly Wilson, designed for use with adults. And it's fantastic and I love it. But what I found was that I was changing the language. I was simplifying the language quite significantly so as to make it suitable for use with children and adolescents. I was also using it with adults as well, and with parents. And so what I did was I just adapted that traditional ACT hexaflex. Sorry, I've just jumped ahead. So I just adapted that to become the ACT Kid Flex. Just going to go back a minute. So there is an ACT model of psychopathology, which is really like the opposite of the ACT hexaflex. And so I also just modified the language in that ACT model of psychopathology just to make that very simple. So you'll be able to see here on the slide, these are the different processes. Now, I don't use the name, I don't talk to the clients about the ACT Kid Inflex. I'm not using these terms of the processes with my clients. But what I'm doing, particularly in the first session with the clients, when I'm obtaining a history and doing my case conceptualization, where I'm mapping out the problem or the difficulty that they're having in terms of ACT, and just working out where do I need to start in terms of the ACT Kid Flex? What process do I need to start with? What are the difficulties that the client has experienced in the past? What are some of the strategies that they've used? What strategies has worked or helped them, and what hasn't? And so I'm just keeping the ACT Kid Flex in my mind to work, just so I know exactly where they are. So can I just ask if everybody could just put themselves on mute, please? Thank you. Okay.
Why?
So, sorry, could you just put yourself on mute, please? Thank you. Okay. So these are just the processes of the Kid Inflex, which I'll just let you read yourselves. So there's unwilling, there's not letting go, there's not knowing what matters, there's not doing what matters, staying in the past and fearing the future, and not being self-aware. And so I developed the ACT Kid Flex. And so the processes of the ACT Kid Flex are really the opposite of the processes of the ACT Kid Inflex. So we've got let it be, let it go, stay here, notice yourself, choose what matters, and doing what matters. And so the goal of the ACT Kid Flex is that I am flexible. I am flexible is not a process of the Kid Flex. So we don't address it directly, but I am flexible is the outcome of using the strategies. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go through the strategies with you. So let it be is just letting all of your thoughts and feelings, unwanted thoughts and feelings, memories, urges, physical sensations, just be there without trying to do anything with them. Let it go is just getting some separation between you and your thoughts. Choose what matters is choosing the things that are important to you, or what matter to you. Doing what matters is doing those things that are important to you. Stay here is also known as mindfulness. And so stay here is just being present and aware of what you're experiencing and what you're feeling, and of your surroundings. And then notice yourself is standing back and actually watching yourself, observing yourself doing things. And when we observe ourselves doing things, we can start to think about whether what we're doing is working for us and is helping us. So I just want to go through just some really simple ways to use these strategies that you can start using straight away with some of the kids and the adolescents that you're working with. So for Let It Be, one thing I really like to do is make a glitter bottle, just plastic glitter bottle with some dishwashing liquid, some food coloring, and some glitter. And you can make this with the child in your sessions, or you can pre-prepare them. What I like to do, I make it in advance of the session, but I send the parent an email and I ask them if the child's got a favorite color. So if I'm doing a face-to-face session in the clinic, I'll have a glitter bottle for myself, and I'll make one ahead of time in using food coloring with the child's favorite color. Since COVID started, I've been, almost 3 years ago now, or 2.5 years ago, I've been doing a lot of sessions online by telehealth. I use the glitter bottles by telehealth, and what I do is I send the parents instructions and ask them to make it up in advance, but I ask them not to show it to the child until the start of the session, just so that the child doesn't become uninterested in it by the time that we have our session. So you can just be shaking the glitter bottle up and down and just help the child practice letting their thoughts just settle like glitter on the bottom of the bottle without doing anything with it. You can draw a backpack and write an invitation to your thoughts, feelings, and sensations to come with you. One of my absolute favorite Let It Be strategies is just saying hi to your thoughts and just imagining that you're giving them a pat on the shoulder. So just like, hi anxiety, like it's great to see you today. And teaching kids and teens to say hi to their thoughts, that's a really, really quick strategy. And they can do that anytime, anywhere. They can do that at school, where they're just imagining that they're saying hi to their thoughts. They don't actually have to say anything out loud. And they can do that on their own without anyone, and no one will be aware of what they're doing. It's just really quick. Okay. What I'd like to do now, I'd like to invite you to do an exercise while we're here in this webinar together. Now, everything in this webinar is completely optional. So if you don't want to, that is absolutely fine. You don't have to. If you're willing to, I'll tell you what the exercise is. All I'd like you to do, if you've got access to some paper and a pen or a pencil, is to just think about a thought that might show up in your mind a lot that you might struggle with. And I'm just going to give you a couple of quick examples. It might be, I'm not a great psychologist, or I'm not a great BCBA, or I'm not a great teacher. I'd just be like, I'm not a great therapist. Or it might be, I'm not a great friend, or I'm not a great parent, or I'm not a great child, or I'm not a great cook. Just if you're willing to, just have a think about a thought that might show up in your mind frequently that you might struggle with. And if you're willing to, I'd like you just to take a little bit of paper. I want you just to take a little bit of paper and take a pen or a pencil. And I'm not going to ask you to share your thought with anyone else. And just write down a thought that you struggle with. Now, you've all got your cameras off, so I can't actually see if you're doing this or not. Please feel free to turn your cameras on if you'd like to. I'm just going to give you about another minute just to finish writing down your thought. Okay. And if you've finished, what I want you to do is I just want you to just rip off that little piece. So you've just got like a little scrap or a little bit of paper with your thought on it. And as you're doing that, and as you're reading your thought, just try and notice anything that's coming up. Just try and notice any thoughts or feelings that your mind is coming up with. Just notice those thoughts and feelings without trying to do anything with them. Just noticing the thoughts that are on your page. And then with your little bit of paper, I'd like you just to fold it up, fold it in half, or fold it a couple of times. And if you've got a pocket in your clothing, I'd like to invite you just to pop that piece of paper with your thought on it in your pocket. If you're wearing a shirt or a jacket or a skirt or pants, if you can just pop it into your pocket. Or if you haven't got a pocket, if you could just tuck it somewhere into your clothing, either just tuck it up into your sleeve or into the waist of your pants or skirt, and anywhere that you can, just tuck it in there. And I want to invite you just to leave it in there. Just leave it in there for the workshop. And what I want to invite you to do is to actually try and carry that little bit of paper around with you for the next week. Now, I will admit that I once forgot that my piece of paper was in a dress, and so it did go into the washing machine. And when I took it out of the washing machine and realized it was in the pocket, I unfolded it and I could actually still read it. So that was pretty cool. But I want you just to try, carry it around with you. And whenever you become aware of it, whenever you remember that you've got it in your pocket, or whenever you feel this, you feel the sensation of the paper against you, I just would like to invite you to just take it out, read it, and then just pop it away. Just try and notice those thoughts without doing anything with those thoughts. I don't want you to rip up the piece of paper. I don't want you to get rid of it. I just want you to carry it around for a week. Try at the end of the day to remember to take it out of your pocket so that it doesn't get in the washing machine. And then the next day, see if you can remember just to put it into the next item of clothing that you're wearing. Okay, so with the let it go process, one thing you might want to do, and I think this is really, really fun to do this with kids and with adolescents, is to sing your thoughts to a tune of a favorite song. And one thing that you can do is do it with musical instruments. I've done this using musical instruments, both with groups in schools, and I've also done it individually with clients. And I've never ever had a client or a group that didn't really enjoy this. So what I just want to recommend is, if you're doing this with clients, that you sing a difficult thought first. So you model that, and then you invite the child or adolescent to do it after you. If you don't do it first, the child or adolescent might be quite nervous and might not feel comfortable to do it. But if you model willingness, which is really the cornerstone of ACT, if you model that you're willing to do things, even if you're uncertain of how it's going to go, or even if you're feeling a bit worried about how the exercise is going to go, I personally find that clients are much more willing to have a go if I say, I'm going to do this with you, and I'll do it first. Another thing is, you can suggest choreographing a dance about their thoughts and performing it. Another way is I'm having the thought dash, and that's I really love that one. So yeah, that's I'm having the thought dash. It's by Hayes and Smith, along with the singing their thoughts to tune of a favorite song. All my mind is telling me. And so the way that you would teach a young person this is, if they say, I'm not good enough, you could teach them to say, instead of, when your mind tells you I'm not good enough, you could then rephrase that to say, or say that again, to say, I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough, or my mind is telling me that I'm not good enough. Another thing, if you could do, if your client enjoys drawing, could do a drawing exercise where they might like draw a picture of themselves and then draw speech bubbles with it and write their thoughts in the speech bubbles. Okay. Another exercise you can do is to, and this is one of my favorite Russ Harris exercises, is to actually name the story. And so what I'd like to invite you to do now is to take your take your notepad. And what I'd like to invite you to do is have a think about the thought that you wrote on your little strip of paper. And I'd like you to try, if you're willing, to come up with a name for that story. So an example that I use, I do get quite nervous about public speaking. I can get quite anxious about presenting workshops. And so when I name the story, I say, here's the story of the woman who was worried about public speaking or who was worried about presenting. So if you'd like to have a go at this, I'd like to invite you now to take your notepad and your pen or your pencil. And I'll give you a couple of minutes. I'd like you to have a go at coming up with a name for your story. Now, there's absolutely no wrong or right. There's no wrong or right way to do this. And so whatever name you give your story will be absolutely fine. Okay, I'm just going to give you one more minute to do that. And if you like this exercise and you want to use this with children and adolescents, I would always recommend that you give them an example of a name of a story. And again, if you'd like to give them a name for your own story, or make up an example from your own life that's appropriate for sharing, I think that's a good way to present this. Okay, I presume that everybody's finished again. I can't see you all. All right. For Choose What Matters, Amy Morell and Kelly Wilson got a really, really lovely exercise using a values box. And so where they get people to write down things that are important to them and pop them in a box. And so what I do is I use a heart-shaped box. I go like to a dollar store and buy a heart-shaped box, which are in Australia, they're quite inexpensive. Not very expensive at all. And what I've done with kids or teens who are really into arts and crafts, I might have like some paints or some colored markers and like some stickers, and we'll do an activity where they'll write down things that are important to them. If they have difficulties writing or they're very young, then I'll offer to write those for them. I'll bring in like pre-cut up strips of paper and then write on the strips, pop them in the box, and then they can decorate the box and they can take that home. One exercise that I really like to do is they can write themselves a thank you card for being a really great person or being really kind. Okay, when we're addressing do what matters, it's not a process where we would be doing like exercises in session with the client, but what we're doing with do what matters is we're helping the young person develop very specific actions that they can do. And one of those actions might be coming to therapy sessions. We're also wanting to help them develop actions that they can do out in their own lives based on the things that are important to them. So one thing that's really important to note here is that as part of addressing Do What Matters, you may actually need to teach the young person how to actually ask for support and help. Some of the young people that you're working with might not be used to asking for help. They might think that they've got to do everything themselves. So you might actually need to teach them how to ask for help. You also might need to help teach them how to actually build a support team of people that they could ask for help, like their parent or siblings or teacher or friends, who can also reinforce the skills that the young person is practicing. So if I'm working with a young person who is pulling their hair out, which is trichotillomania, then the team of people that we will be building as their support people, those people will also be giving them positive reinforcement, giving them praise when they see that when they start to pull their hair out, they might put their hands down and stop pulling. And so it would be important to have support people actually saying to the young person, hey, great job. I noticed you were pulling, but you stopped. That was really, really good, like awesome job. It's really, really important when addressing Do What Matters that you ensure that the plan that the client is coming up with is realistic. And so Kirk Strozahl says that if we don't help the client come up with a plan that's realistic, they're much more likely to fail, and they're also very likely to not be able to continue. So let's say you're working with a young person who's very anxious socially and is afraid of approaching people in the playground, in the yard, at school, and you might be working on perhaps approaching somebody else at lunch or at recess and trying to join in a game with them or inviting them to play with them. And so the young person you're working with might say, oh, I'm going to go up to someone every day at school. Now, if the young person isn't currently approaching anyone, going from nothing to every day at school might not be realistic and might not be sustainable long term. So it would be a lot better to say to that young person, well, how about like we aim for maybe like twice a week? Like, would that be possible? And that might be something that the young person can sustain. It's also really, really important to help the young person plan for setbacks, because it's very likely that whatever issue or difficulty you're helping the client with, it's just very normal and it's very natural that we all experience setbacks, and really teaching the young person that experiencing setbacks doesn't mean that they've failed. Okay. When you're doing stay here mindfulness with young children, you can do things like Saltzman and Golden have got like a really beautiful moving like seaweed activity, or you can do like mindfully building sandcastles or playing like with Play-Doh with both. And so I use those with young children, with children and adolescents, mindful eating, mindfully listening to music, mindfully walking, mindfully playing sport, or mindfully playing like a board game. Mindful reading is a great skill to help to teach them, especially like if they're doing silent reading in the classroom, and mindfully drawing and painting as well. And there's many, many more that. So notice yourself, that was the process where we're trying to stand back and just watch ourselves. And so one activity that I really like to use with young children, I haven't tried this with older children, I've used this with children who are 5 and 6 years old, is making like a pair of binoculars out of like like empty toilet rolls. And we might like look through the binoculars and see what we can see like around the room and outside. And then we might focus those binoculars on ourselves and look at like what can we see in ourselves, and what sorts of thoughts and feelings might we be able to see. I have a movie exercise in my book where we're imagining that we're watching a movie about our lives with someone playing us in the movie. Another way of doing that is dance floor, to ask the young person, take the young person through an experiential exercise where they're watching themselves on a dance floor, imagining like the sky with clouds in it, imagining that you're the sky that holds the clouds and everything else, and imagining that you're that the clouds are your thoughts and feelings. You can also do that like with a garden with trees and plants and flowers, or like a lake with lilies and fish. Okay, so in terms of getting started with the ACT Kid Flex, I really encourage you just to let your own thoughts and feelings just be and go. If you feel anxious, if you're feeling nervous, trying to use ACT with young people, just asking yourself why working with children and adolescents matters to you. Just noticing yourself in sessions, just noticing what shows up for you, and just noticing how you respond to what shows up for you. And really just trying to stay here in sessions, and not just problem solving, but really trying to listen to what the young person is telling you, and really just telling the young person that they're the most important person in the room, and really showing this, really show thanking them for what they're sharing with you, thanking them for being willing to try some of the experiential exercises, and thanking them for coming to sessions with you, and really being willing to make mistakes. So it's not just about trying to teach willingness to the child or the adolescent, but really being willing to make mistakes as a therapist yourself, really being willing to take some risks, to step outside your own comfort zone and try some new exercises, even if you're worried that you might make mistakes, and asking the young person for feedback. How was that for you? Like, what did you think of that? My number one recommendation is that whatever you do in your work with children and adolescents, keep it really simple. The more simple, the better, and the more simple, the more likely they are to understand it. Okay. So we can talk about the idea of wearing ACT lenses when we're working with kids and adolescents, just really listening with ACT ears and with ACT eyes. And what that means, what I mean by that is just listening and watching, listening really carefully and watching carefully. It's okay to have an idea of what process and exercises you might want to do, and you might plan out your therapy sessions in advance. It's okay to go in with an idea, but just really being willing to put your plans aside and just move very flexibly to the process that the child or adolescent is bringing up. So if they're talking about a situation or difficulties that they're having, just like, you might have had like a do what or choose what matters exercise planned, but your client might be really struggling with their thoughts and feelings. And so you might think, actually, it would be better to put the choose what matters exercise aside. We can do that next time. They're really struggling with some thoughts and feelings today. So I'm going to address let it be and perhaps let it go. And I'll just put my plans on hold for next time. Okay, so in terms of getting buy-in from the young person for ACT, look, I like to just be really honest and acknowledge that some things in ACT kind of sound really weird, or can sound quite weird or quite strange, especially if you're hearing about ACT for the first time. And so I like to say to the young person, I'm going to be asking you to try some new exercises. They might seem a bit weird. They might seem really strange. It might not make sense. You might think, oh my gosh, like, what is Tamar talking about? And I just say that's okay. Like, just go with it. I'll say to them, like, if you're willing to, I'd like to introduce you to some exercises, and I'd love to show you some new ways of managing your thoughts and feelings. But again, it's all about willingness, and really stressing that everything is optional. You're not going to make them, you're not going to force them to do anything. They get to choose whether they want to do these exercises, or not, and they get to choose whether they um, whether they want to participate in sessions with you. Informed consent is super important. So always giving an explanation before you start any exercise. So always explaining first, if you're willing, I'd like to try this exercise. What I would do is da 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 da. What I'll be asking you to do is da 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 da. And then if would you be willing to try that? And if they are, great, thank you so much. Okay, we'll start the exercise now. So not ever just getting into an exercise without obtaining the person's consent first. What I might do is, being honest, I've worked with other young people with the same problems, difficulties, and I'd really like to try and help you. Would you be willing to see whether I might be able to help you? Okay, super important that whatever you do using ACT, that you do act, you don't just talk about ACT. And so what I mean there is doing like some experiential exercises, or doing like some drawing in, or some of the activities that we've already done today, like with the paper, or naming your story, writing down your difficult thought and carrying it with you. Really, like, always doing activities, not just talking about, not saying, oh, you could do this or you could do this, but every session try to bring in one exercise. Okay, so I'm going to play you a video in a minute of an 11-year-old boy, and it's our first session. So I'm showing you case conceptualization, and what I would like you to pay attention to, just see if you can pick up some of the KidFlex processes that I'm using. Okay.
I've just been having some trouble speaking out in class because I'm scared of what people are going to think.
Yeah, okay. So what does speaking out in class mean?
Like answering the questions and getting scared it's going to be wrong.
Okay, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I certainly remember struggling with that myself at school. And you know what? I work with a lot of young people, and that's it's something really common for a lot of young people. And I think for adults as well, like a lot of adults also, like if they're in a meeting, or if they're studying, if they're like learning at college or university, I think a lot of adults also get nervous about like asking questions or answering questions. Absolutely. And so what are some of the worries that show up for you when you get worried about asking a question or answering one?
I'm scared I'm going to be wrong and people are going to make fun of me for it.
Okay. Ezra, can you remember when this might have begun for you? Like when you started having this worry?
I think I remember it probably starting a few years ago, probably at the start of lockdown.
Okay. Yeah. So was that like 2 years ago when we first went into COVID lockdowns?
Yeah, around then.
Okay. And what do you do when this worry shows up? Like what would be like, how would you respond to it?
I would probably text my mum.
Yeah. Okay.
And just and end up probably deciding just to stay quiet.
So can you think, other than texting mum, can you think of anything else that you tried to do to manage difficulty?
I've sometimes tried to just do it and just try and ask a question, even if they make fun of me. or I'll just stay quiet in class most of the time and not
Wow.
ask.
Wow. Tell me about the times when you have asked a question, even when you've been worried about the kids making fun of you. And wow, gosh, really, really, amazing, amazing that you've been able to do that. Really, really, really well done.
It was probably in English mostly because I have a few academic problems, and so English is quite hard for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so mainly in English. Yeah.
Okay. Can you just speak up a little bit, if possible? Because you're just a little bit
Oh
faint.
yeah.
Thank
Oh
you.
yeah. Of course. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. And so can you think of any times when you have asked a question or answered a question, and can you think about like what that's been like for you and how the other students have responded?
Um. Well, sometimes if it's like a silly question that they might look at me a bit odd, but most of the time they don't really pay attention, so it's okay. It's generally fine, but I still worry about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Totally, totally get it. It's completely understandable. And so sometimes you're asking a question, but other times it sounds like when your mind tells you that you're really worried and that you shouldn't ask a question, there's some times when you're listening to what your mind tells you and you're not asking a question.
Yeah, very much.
Okay, okay. And what's that experience like for you when you want to ask a question but you don't?
It's stressful because I don't really know what to do, and so I find it a bit stressful because I don't know what to do.
Yes, absolutely. And does that mean that you can then go on and get your work done? Or do you find
Some
that you can't?
some of the time, but some of the time not. I might just get really stuck and not know what to do and not get the work done.
Okay. And so what happens when you're stuck and you can't get the work done?
Well, generally the teacher would notice and probably come help me because she'll notice my page is blank without me having to ask. But sometimes that doesn't happen.
And do you think that you're avoiding, apart from sometimes avoiding asking questions in class or other situations, are you avoiding doing anything else, or do you avoid seeing anyone or going anywhere because of this worry about what people are going to think about what you might ask or what you might say?
I sometimes do, but I'm trying to just go meet my friends and things and just do things.
Wow, well done, well done. And
Thank
so
you.
do you go and meet people and do things even when your mind is coming up with some worries about it?
I most of the time I do because I realize that it will probably fine and I'll probably have a good time.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Wow, amazing. Really, really well done. Fantastic to hear.
Thanks.
Wow. So when your mind is coming up with worries about going out socially with friends, you're not listening to your mind and you're going anyway.
Yeah.
Are there other situations where worries show up, but you'll do things anyway?
Um. Maybe at home I'm worried to disturb my mum from her work because she's really busy a lot of the time. So I
Yeah.
sometimes don't see her a lot, and so it sometimes is a bit worrying because I don't want to disturb her because I want her to get her work done.
Okay. That's really kind and really thoughtful of you. And you're noticing that mum's busy and you're not wanting to disturb her. That's really, really kind and caring of you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there so apart from class, are there any other situations where your mind tells you not to do something and you don't do it because you're worried or because you're afraid? and you're listening to your mind and not doing what it's telling, not doing something.
It might be not to sing out loud because I'm worried what people will think.
Okay, yeah. And so what situation would that be in where you want to sing out loud?
Well, I really enjoy singing and I want to sing publicly, but I'm really scared of what people will think. So.
Oh, okay. And so when your mind tells you that you want to sing, would it be like in situations where it's appropriate to sing, or would it be like, let's just say, like in the middle of maths class?
Oh no, it'll be in a situation where it's appropriate to sing.
Okay. And so have there been situations where it's been appropriate to sing, but your mind said, like, don't do it, it's going to be really scary, or you're not going to do a good job or something?
Yeah, there has, yeah.
Okay. And so what would be like some of the things that your mind would tell you?
You're not good enough, people are gonna make fun of you.
Wow. Okay. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing these things with me.
It's no problem. Thank you for talking them about with me.
Oh, what a pleasure. What a pleasure. It can be really, really difficult to talk about our thoughts and feelings. And I just want to say I think you're doing an absolutely amazing job. And I appreciate being able to have this conversation with you.
Great, thank you.
Pleasure. Okay. So tell me, what would be some of the situations where you might be singing, or you might be, in a situation where it's appropriate to sing, but your mind says don't do it, and you listen to your mind. When would that be?
Or maybe at school when there's it's just a singing competition or something. I try to talk myself out of doing it. And I generally don't end up doing it because I'm too scared.
Wow. And is this like to sing in a group, or is this to sing solo?
Solo.
Wow. Okay. So do you think that you avoid participating in singing activities or singing competitions because you're worried?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And how long do you think that's been happening for?
Quite a while, that one. I'm not quite sure, but quite a while, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so when this worry shows up about what people are going to think if you sing, what's the behavior or what's the action that normally happens?
What do you mean by that?
Oh, sorry. So do you not sing, or do you say, I'm not going to listen to my mind when it's telling me, not to sing. I'm going to enter the competition anyway.
Well, some of the time I'll enter it anyway, but most of the time I'll listen to my mind.
Okay. So with the singing, you listen to your mind. With the asking questions in class, sometimes you listen to your mind, sometimes you don't. There are some times when you do singing activities, but you're saying most of the time you listen to your mind.
Yeah, definitely.
And so can you think about a time when your mind told you not to do something because you were worried or because you were afraid, but you did it anyway?
There was this competition at school, just a skits competition in the squad for this thing we do. And I told my mind I should do it, and so I did it, and I had a lot of fun. I didn't make it in, but I had a lot of fun.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what did you sing?
It was a 90s theme, so I sung Believe by Cher.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I I want to start singing the tune, Believe, because I recognize the song, but I'm actually noticing the thoughts that my own mind is coming up with it. I'm really, really not a good singer, so I won't sing it. But wow, gosh, I love Cher. She's amazing, and she, such a strong singer, and can, carry those notes. Wow. And so when was this that you sung Believe?
Earlier in the year.
Wow. And about how many people did you sing it in front of?
I'm not sure.
Were there a lot, do you think?
Well, it was going through the speakers of the school, so I'm not sure.
Wow.
Yeah, the outside speakers.
Wow. How incredibly brave of you to have a go at that. Incredible. That's awesome. Really, really well done. Great job.
Thanks.
And can you remember, and you might not be able to, so that's okay. Don't worry if you don't remember. But can you remember, like, were you feeling nervous before did you go on a stage?
It was like a deck stage, but it was a stage.
Wow. Were you feeling nervous at all beforehand?
100% very.
When did the nerves start, do you think?
When I was heading down, getting ready to go on, they were nerves.
Okay. Can you remember some of the things that your mind might have said to you right beforehand?
You're not good enough. You can do this. Everything's gonna be fine. You know the words. Looking at the words a lot.
So this is really interesting. So on the one hand, your mind was telling you, like, not to do it, but then your mind was also reassuring you that you know the words.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And so
Yeah.
what made you decide to go out on that deck stage instead of listening to your mind when it said don't do it? Why didn't you just turn around and be like, no, I can't do this, and walk away?
Because I had already signed up for it and I had committed and I wanted to do it.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I'd love to just hear a little bit more about that, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, it's alright.
So I just want to break that down a bit. You wanted to do it, you had already signed up, you had committed. And so what was it about having committed to sing that mattered to you? It sounds like there was something important to you because you had made the commitment to the school, to sing. What was it about that mattered to you?
Oh well, I'm really into musicals and things, and the same people who are judging it and like doing it were the people who also cast the school musical, and so I wanted to make a good impression. Because if I dropped out, I wouldn't have made a good impression.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Okay. Well, I love how you're so clear about what mattered to you about singing. Wow.
Yeah.
And so the other part was that you said that you wanted to do this, you wanted to sing. Can you tell me a bit about what mattered to you, or why singing was important to you?
Well, I've always loved singing, and like it makes me really happy. And so being able to do it makes me really happy.
Wow. And so if you had listened to your mind when it said don't do this, and if you had have just turned around and walked off that deck stage and not sung and not had a go at this, do you think you would have felt like you had missed out on anything?
I definitely reckon I would have felt like I missed out on things. Yes, I would.
Wow. And so did you find, Ezra, that like the more you sang in front of other people, the more you were able to do it?
Yes, definitely, 100% always.
Okay. So what if we applied that to asking questions in class? What if you asked questions in class, even when your mind is telling you that you're worried about what the other kids are going to think?
Sorry, my microphone just fell. I think I could probably improve in my learning and get better in my learning.
Okay. So with the singing, if we go back to that singing competition at school, you were worried, and right beforehand, your mind was coming up with some worry, but what kept you going, what helped you to actually go through with auditioning was that you had made a commitment to the school and you didn't want to not carry through with that commitment.
Yes.
And then you also wanted to reassured yourself that you knew the words and you knew that you did want to have a go and do this.
Yeah, you're totally right about that.
What if you were to make a commitment to your learning? And so did you find people the more you were able to do it?
Yes, definitely, 100% always.
Okay. So what if we applied that to asking questions in class? What if you asked questions in class, even when your mind is telling you that you're worried about what the other kids are going to think?
Sorry, my microphone just fell. I think I could probably improve in my learning and get better in my learning.
Okay. So with the singing, if we go back to that singing competition at school, you were worried, and right beforehand, your mind was coming up with some worry, but what kept you going, what helped you to actually go through with auditioning was that you had made a commitment to the school and you didn't want to not carry through with that commitment.
Yes.
And then you also wanted to reassured yourself that you knew the words and you knew that you did want to have a go and do this.
Yeah, you're totally right about that.
What if you were to make a commitment to your learning and make a commitment to yourself to do whatever you need to do for your learning, so that you are able to ask questions when you're not sure? And what that means is that then when the teacher gives you work to do, if you're unsure and you've already asked a question, then you'd be able to get into your work rather than sitting there and hoping that the teacher will notice that you're not doing the work and then come over to help you.
That's a really good idea. I never thought about it like that.
And so,
All right. Before I go on, does anyone have any comments about the video? If you can either take yourselves off mute, or if you want to pop any comments in the chat. I want to ask you, what processes could you see in that video? Which KidFlex processes could you see? Could you see Ezra? Could you see Ezra already using any of the KidFlex processes? Just having a look in the chat. Okay. So just in terms of suggested protocol for sessions, the first session was case conceptualization. So that video was the first session with Ezra. And just I would I've just made some suggestions about the order that could be followed for working with Ezra. What I just want to say in terms of protocol is that I don't follow the same. Sorry, I'm just reading comment. Yeah, really, really great comment. He was labeling his thoughts that impacted his actions. Absolutely. I felt like he was already using ACT beautifully, even though he was worried about singing in the singing competition. He was very, very clear that singing in that competition was something that mattered to him. So I wouldn't be addressing choose and do what matters in the first session, in the first therapy session with him, because he's already choosing and doing what matters. I would still address choose and do what matters, but a bit later, just to have a look at. So he was seeing me because he was anxious about putting up his hand in class. And asking questions. And so I was finding out whether he's done anything else where he felt worried or where he felt anxious. And so, yes, Kelsey's put in the chat, he was able to identify his actions, behaviors related to his thoughts. So impressive. Absolutely. And it was just so incredible that even though he felt anxious about singing, he went ahead and did it. He didn't want to let people down, and it really mattered to him that he sang. So that's just an example of a suggested protocol. What I just want to say about protocol is that I do not follow the same order of processes with every client. I'm very much tailoring which sessions I address based on which processes do I believe or do I feel are the greatest priority, rather than following the same process, the same order each time. And it's just super important that we be providing home tasks each session so that the young person can be practicing the ACT processes in between the sessions. If they're only practicing processes in sessions with us and they're not practicing sessions in their own lives, they're not going to remember what you've taught them, and they're not going to be able to start making changes in terms of their behaviors. So we really need to provide home tasks every time we see them, and just making home tasks really, really simple, quick, simple things that are easy for the child to do, and tasks that may be easy for them to remember to do. Okay. Are there any questions so far about anything before I move into working with parents? Yeah, sure. So I'm absolutely just going to get into the examples, of the home task, but I can do that now for sure. Thank you for asking that. Okay. So some of the examples of home tasks would be actually doing the things that they might be frightened or might be worried about. So with Ezra, one of his home tasks that I suggested in that first session was to have a go at putting his hand up in class and asking a question, even if his mind told him that he was worried about what people would think of his question. So remember, we talked about doing what matters being actions that the child would, or that the client do what matters is actions that the client is doing in between sessions that are moving towards the things that matter. So the home tasks will be, okay, what are the things that matter to you? Let's come up with a plan so you can start doing those things. But also just practicing like some of the let it be strategies, like just saying hi to your thoughts, like high sadness or high worries or high nervousness, just practicing saying hi to your thoughts and feelings, imagining like just giving it like a pat on the shoulder. Or one thing I do a lot with kids and adolescents is like imagine like you're giving like a high five when you see it, when you see it, like, hi worries, high five, like, great to see you, you're looking great today. I love the way you've done your hair today, or I love that outfit that you're wearing. Practicing naming the story. So really practicing those strategies that you're giving them in sessions, practicing some of the mindfulness strategies, the stay here. So I absolutely love mindful eating, and so I'll do mindful eating with the young person in a therapy session, but then practicing, okay, when you're at home, how about you practice mindful eating, or just also like doing tasks that are part of their day-to-day routine, doing those mindfully. So brushing their teeth mindfully, or listening to music mindfully, just really trying to concentrate on the lyrics and any instruments, what you can hear in the music. And if you notice that your mind drifts away and you start getting caught up in your thoughts, just trying to gently bring your mind back to listening to the music. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move now into working with parents and training parents as ACT coaches. Can I just ask before I start, how many of you would be involving parents in the work that you're doing, and training the parents in the therapy that you're using with the young person, and giving the parents strategies that they can use with the child? Okay. So can you just pop in the chat if you're already doing like parent training or giving strategies to parents? Oh, I love that. Yeah. I love this one from Kristen, catching them practicing the new skill and providing praise in the moment. Absolutely. Great, great. So it sounds like great people are doing parent training. Fantastic. You know what? I have to admit, I'm so surprised when I'm speaking to parents whose children have had therapy with other therapists before they've seen me. And, I'll say to the parents, can you tell me what therapy was that therapist doing with your child? Or what therapy did the previous therapist do? And 99.9% of the time, parents are telling me they've got no idea. The therapist never told them the name of the therapy. They didn't know. And I say, like, did you get any feedback at the end of the child's session, or were you ever in the session with the child? Did you receive strategies that you could do to reinforce what your child was learning? And I'm just finding that the answer seems to always be no. So I think it's really, really important, that we do involve parents, and that we can try to train parents in the therapy that we're using. I think that there's lots and lots of benefits to that. Firstly, on a very practical level, children and adolescents might not remember everything that they've learned in therapy sessions with us. And so if we can just give the parent an overview, these are the strategies that I've taught your child today. This is why, this is what we're working on. And these are some strategies that I'd like you to try with your child at home to reinforce what I've taught them in our session. That just takes away the onus on the child or the young person to have to remember everything that we've taught them. The other thing is, if you're using, let's say you're using ACT with the young person, if parents are giving, like, let's say parents are using like CBT consistent strategies, like if the young person is saying, talking to their parent about thoughts and feelings that they're having, or worries, or feeling sad, or feeling angry. And let's say the parent says, oh, don't think about that, just think about something else, or like go and watch TV to take your mind off it. Those types of strategies about avoidance, they're not consistent with ACT. And so the young person might be really confused. I'm learning one thing in my therapy sessions, but my parent is telling me to do something really different. And it might be really confusing for the young person. They might not know what to follow. So they might not use any strategies at all. I think that children and adolescents are much more likely to start using ACT themselves and taking on the strategies that we're teaching them if they also see them modeled in their home. I think that if they see their parents using them and using them consistently with the way that we're using them in our therapy sessions, it's just greater exposure. The more the child sees the ACT strategies being taught to them and being modeled, the more likely they are to start taking them on board. And then I think that the young person's siblings benefit too, because even if they're not having any difficulties, they're having that good modeling, they're having that good learning. Okay, so how can we actually teach ACT to parents? How can we train parents in ACT? One of the first things that I like to talk to parents about is just looking at, okay, are the strategies that they're using at home with their child, are they short-term solutions or are they long-term strategies? And what I mean by that is, look, I see short-term solutions as being something that's designed to try and fix a problem quickly. It might not necessarily be something that's going to be great as a long-term strategy. So I'm thinking that if a child's feeling really angry in the morning before school and says, I don't want to go to school, and a parent's solution might be, oh, okay, well, I'll keep them home because they're too angry, or yeah, I'll just give in to them so that we don't have an argument, so that my child doesn't get angry. That might be a solution short term that stops the child being angry, but that's not necessarily a workable long-term strategy, because if the parent keeps the child home from school every time the child is feeling angry, well, firstly, the child might end up missing a lot of school, but it's actually going to be reinforcing the child's anger. The child's going to learn pretty quickly, oh, all I have to do to get out of school is to get angry, and then I'll get my own way. It's important to train parents. Look, at a lot of parents don't want their child to be feeling upset, or anxious, or stressed, etc. And so a lot of I see a lot of the times that the strategies that parents are using might be strategies that might be trying to reduce the child's distress. And so I think that the first thing we can do when we're trying to work with parents and help the parent coach their child in that is to actually let the parents know it's okay for your child to feel anxious or to feel stressed, etc. Nothing terrible, nothing bad is actually going to happen to your child as a result of feeling worried, or anxious, or stressed. It's okay. Feeling that way isn't actually going to hurt them. In my work, I see that a lot of parents might want, their initial reaction might be to keep the child home from school or from a summer camp or an activity or a party, as a way to protect their child from the child's thoughts and feelings about going to that event. As long as that event is safe, there, and I'm not sort of talking about like where they know like the child's being bullied at school and they're not intervening to keep their child safe. But when we don't send kids to school or to sport practice because the child is feeling anxious or whatever it is, that is promoting avoidance in that child. And it actually reinforces the child's belief that they shouldn't go out of the home when they're struggling with their thoughts and feelings. If we come back to the ACT Kid Inflex model, where the overall result of those using those processes is I am inflexible. So when the parent keeps the child home, they're often reinforcing and modeling inflexibility. Okay, so I just want to suggest to you that, and look, I don't know whether you're having all your therapy sessions in the clinic, or whether you're going to schools, or whether you're going to your clients' homes. And for those of you that are going to the homes, I don't know whether the parents are actually in the room when you're doing the therapy with the child, or whether you see the child on their own and then the parents join you at the end. What I want to just suggest is that you either have the parents in the room for the whole session if the young person is consenting to that, or if that's not suitable, invite I invite the parent in for the first. If the parent is not going to be there for the whole time, I invite the parent just to come in, like give me just a quick overview of how things have been since the last session. Then some of the young people I work with want the parents in the room the whole time. Others don't want them in the whole time. So if they don't, the parent leaves the room, sits in the waiting room. But what I like to do is in the last 10 minutes of the session, get the child to invite the parent into the room. And I like to give the parent an overview, not what the child has told me in that session, but just to go through, okay, these are the strategies that I've taught your child today. This is what we're working towards. I like to explain to the parent why I'm teaching those strategies, just because it can sound a little bit strange, can sound a little bit different. And so I just like to show the parent that this is what we're working towards. And so I've taught this strategy as we're working towards, let's say, achieving greater independence or greater resilience, whatever our treatment goals are. So giving them an overview and then providing some tips of what they could do. So what I like to do when I'm giving the parent tips, really simple, practical, quick things that they could do at home. So it might be something like the parent modeling, I'm having the thought that, or my mind is telling me. And so what I recommend to So I'm just going to have a look at this question. Do you ever find that children feel you are not primarily their provider when you invite this much parent participation within their time? Yeah, great question. Really great question. Thank you so much for asking that. What I do in the very first session, where I'm doing that case conceptualization, obtaining a history, and getting a history of how the child's coped with the difficulty or with the problem. I like to explain, if you choose to come back and see me, this is how I want to work. And I explain to the child and the parent that I want us to work together as a team. And so I'll explain to the child that I want to train their parents in the therapy, so that when the parents are trying to give the child or the young person help with managing the difficulty at home, they'll be able to give them strategies that are very similar to what I've been teaching them in the sessions, and that will help them remember. I personally find I see a lot of relief in the young person when I make that suggestion. Young people seem to like that idea that mum and dad are going to perhaps, or their parent or caregiver is going to learn some new strategies. And what I often find is that the parent might turn to the child and say, or the young person say, I might learn some new strategies. And so the young person very often likes hearing that their parent might be learning some new ways as well. So look, every yeah, I was just about to say whether this approach would change with teenagers, and you've Dori, you've preempted that. So look, it does look quite different with every client. With some of the people that I work, some of the young people I work with, they want their parent in the room the whole time. They find it super helpful for the parent to be learning with them. Others don't want their parent in the room at all. And so it might just be very, really just be a couple of brief minutes at the end of the session where I might just say, like, at the very beginning to the parent, is there any, I might just say in the waiting room, and there's no, the clinic that I'm at, there's actually, I'm the only practitioner in the building when I'm there. So there's no one else in the waiting room apart from the parent, the child, and I might just say really quickly to them, is there anything that you think that I need to know this week before we start the session? So there's not always things that the parent needs to tell me at the beginning of every session. So it might be the young person with me for 50 minutes. We have the session. I'll then discuss with the young person, I'll negotiate with the young person, okay, just really like to give mum and dad some feedback about just the strategies that I've shared with you today. I might say to the young person, what are you comfortable with me sharing with mum and dad? Or I might say, would it be okay if I just share that strategy with them, that when you're going to that sleepover or that party next weekend or that friend's house, you are feeling quite nervous about going, but you're going to give it a go. You're going to have a go anyway, because going to that party is really important to you because it's your best friend's party. But can I just share with them the plan that we've developed, that you're going to take your cell phone with you, and if things are not going well, you're going to call your parents and ask them to come and get you. So I'm very much discussing with the parent, sorry, with the young person, what the information is. At the school that I work at, the children, the students are at the school, so that parents are not there. So I might just say at the end of the session, could I give your parent, would it be all right if I just send them a quick email, tell them that we've been talking about your panic attacks today. Can I just share the strategies that I've given you about what you're going to do next time you have a panic attack? So I'm just very much discussing with the young person and getting their agreement. So it's very, very collaborative. And so that the young person is really seeing that I really value their opinion and that they're my client, not their parents. Okay. And so just with home tasks, I'll be recommending tasks for the young person to do, and then tasks for the parent that is going to model what I've taught the young person. And then just at the very beginning of the next session, I'll just be like, how did you all go with that home tasks? Were you able to remember what I suggested? Did you do them? If not, why not? Or, how did they go? Okay. So just the strategies for parents. I don't give parents complicated or long strategies, because who has time for extra things? I think that parents' lives are busy enough. So just quick, simple, just based on really, really everyday examples. So my favorite one might be to just say to the parent, oh, early in the evening, before you prepare dinner, you could say to your child out aloud, I'm having the thought that I don't know what to cook for dinner, or I'm having the thought that we've had chicken too many times this week. I'd like to try and come up with something more interesting, or my mind's telling me I'm not sure what I'm going to cook for dinner. And like, that's just such a quick and easy strategy that's not going to take parents a lot of time to do. And if the parent is just modeling that to the child, just quick, neutral, simple, I'm not asking the parent to disclose their own problems or difficulties. There's nothing there that's going to be, a burden for the child to hear that. But the child might recognize, oh gosh, mum's just said, or dad's just said, what Tamar said. Like, I've had young people who'll come back and they'll be like, oh, mum remembered, mum's been saying, my mind's having the thought that. And I think that kids really sort of, young people like hearing their parents using it and seeing that the parents are using the strategies. And I think they like seeing that the parents are going to the effort to do it. So yeah, just simple, quick tasks. And then I just refer to them as home tasks, not homework. Otherwise, I find that young people tend to associate them with school work. So just in terms of some ways for parents to practice and model let it be and let it go, just simple things like, hello, nervousness, I love the way you've done your hair, or getting the parent to come up like with a name of their own story, or my mind is telling me that I'm feeling disappointed. It's not a sunny day today, or I'm having a thought that I'm feeling tired. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is just really reminding the parent, don't need to disclose any big difficulties, just really neutral sort of everyday examples. In terms of practicing and modeling choose what matters and do what matters, just asking the parent, like, what are some of the things that are really important to you? What are some of the things that you really care about? And what could you start doing to show your child that you're moving towards doing some of those things or doing them more often? So maybe self-care is really important to the parent, and maybe as a result of their very busy lives, they are not devoting much time to their own self-care. And so could say to the parent, what could you start doing that might model that you're starting to move towards engaging in self-care? Or what could you do that would show your child that you're engaging in self-care more often? Asking when could you start and how often. If we don't ask when could you start and how often, then they might not actually come up with a plan to do what matters. And so parents can model to their child something like, I'm going for a walk because exercising and spending time in nature is important to me. So they're just, nice, quick, simple ways that the parents can model those two processes. In terms of helping parents practice and model stay here and notice yourself, I said before, like, I love mindful eating. And what you could do is do mindful eating with the young person in a session, and then give the young person and their parent each just a little script of how to do mindful eating, just noticing the smell of the food, the taste, the texture, the colors, the sensation. And when you notice your mind starts to drift away and you're getting caught up in your head or in your thoughts, just gently bringing your attention back to eating the food. And so I say to parents, well, how about you encourage your whole family to do this? Why don't you do this as a whole family? And how about the child or the young person has a go at teaching the family? If there's two parents, or if they have if the child has siblings, then perhaps they could try to teach it to the whole family. The parent might need to help them out a little bit, like especially like if there's siblings who are interrupting and not listening, the parent might need to help a little bit. So yeah, the parents can can practice, mindfully listening to music and reading and mindfully cooking, doing things like that. And they can practice notice yourself by saying things like that they're noticing what they're doing. So I'm noticing that I'm watching TV when I really need to go and do some work. Or parents could model, I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel angry. So I'm going to go to another room and I'm going to take some time out. Okay. I'm just going to play you a little bit of a video in a minute. I'm just mindful of the time because we did start a little late, just as we were waiting for people to come in. Has anyone got any questions or any comments before I play a video with a parent? Okay. All right. So I'm going to play a video now, and I want you just to, again, sort of watch out and see if you can notice what KidFlex processes I'm using.
We've had to play around with those times with her teachers. And if she's very anxious, we have a policy in place where some of her girlfriends can come and meet her, and then they go upstairs or to lunch, or if she wants time out, she can go to the library.
Okay. Yeah. And so how does it work? Like, do you work out with her in advance, like what day she's going to go to school, or just some days does she just wake up and she says, I can't go?
No, I think it's just random.
Okay. And so is she going sort of pretty much every day, or are there some days where you just can't get her to go at all?
Occasionally, but she's a lot better now, where she's really doing a full week.
Okay, great, great. And the days that are hard for her to go, but she goes anyway, how does she feel after she's been to school? Like, if she doesn't go in the morning, but she goes in the afternoon, how is she when she comes home in the afternoon?
She's proud of herself.
Well, great.
She's
Right.
very proud of herself that she was able to get over that initial feeling of anxiety and unknowns. And but sometimes she's upset because she might feel that she's missed some learning and will worry about that.
Okay, so she's worried about missing out on some of her classes when she stays home?
Yes, but sometimes she might be at school and she might be a bit tired, so she can't concentrate properly.
Okay, okay. And when she comes home from school on the days that she felt anxious about going, does she say when she comes home, that once she was there, she didn't feel anxious at all? Or does she say that she still felt anxious, but she was able to go to her classes anyway?
Some classes she was able to go to and some not.
Okay. So when she feels really anxious at school, do you think that she doesn't go to her classes because she's feeling anxious, or would she go to some of those classes even when she feels anxious?
She'd still go to class.
Okay, great, great. So what's happening that sometimes she's in the library instead of going to class?
Generally, if she's a little bit tired or she is feeling anxious and it's getting too noisy, she says, it's getting too noisy, mummy. So she'll just speak to the teacher, and she'll go downstairs to wellbeing, and she can go to the library and just read a book or just relax.
What does she worry might happen to her if she went to class and it was very noisy?
She finds it difficult to explain
Okay.
She just says that she gets, I think the anxiety turns into a noise factor situation where her senses are heightened.
Okay. And are there times where she tells you that she stayed in a class that was noisy, and even though she didn't like the noise of it, she got through it, she was okay?
She's had to go out a couple of times and wanted to cry because it just was too much.
Okay.
But the breathing techniques is very good for her. And if she's very anxious, she'll look at her surroundings and putting her feet on the floor, kind of, and then she gets more centered and realizes that everything's okay.
Okay. And so what do you think it would be like if, it sounds like she's using grounding techniques when she's anxious. It sounds like that's helping her. What do you think it would be like if Lily just noticed, my mind's telling me that I'm feeling anxious in class, my mind's telling me that I don't like the noise, but she just brings her attention back to what the teacher's saying and stays in class even though she feels uncomfortable with the noise?
Yeah, she can do that.
Okay.
I think she can do that.
Okay.
I'll talk to her about that.
Okay. And tell me about the mornings when you just can't get her to go, and then, on those days she might arrive at lunchtime. What happens in the mornings that she won't always go?
Well, I think physically she's not as fit as she used to be, going to school every day, all day, and then she could go and do tennis after school, or gymnastics. It was never an issue. But being home and not being able to go out as much as she did, just normal everyday things, I think it's more the fitness level. So I think time-wise, we need to build back that strength. I think that's really a good routine, and a lot of it's just physical strength, getting back to her normal fitness level.
Okay, so the days that she doesn't want to go in the mornings, do you think she's feeling too tired to go? Is that what's happening?
Yes, I do. I think she's probably overdone it the day before, perhaps, and then she's anxious, will she be able to go to school on time and not miss work? And she wants to see her friends, but she's too tired, and that will cause exhaustion.
Okay. So it sounds like her friends are really important to her. It sounds like spending time with her friends is something that matters a lot to her, because you mentioned before that like if she arrives at school in the middle of the day, the teacher will get some of the other girls and they'll meet her, and then she'll go off with them. So it sounds like spending time and connecting with her friends is something that's really important to her.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And I've also heard you say that, if she's not in class, she also gets worried about the work that she's missed out on.
Yes.
Okay. So in the mornings, if she's feeling tired or if she's feeling anxious about going to school, would she ever go, even though she feels tired and anxious? Would she go anyway?
In those circumstances, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
However, I'll ask her what she did yesterday that she didn't maybe feel that she was able to process, and we'll go over that, and she'll understand it, and she'll then feel proud of herself that she doesn't have to worry so much about what she's missing out on if we then go back over her work, and she'll again realise that she's not falling behind. We just have to go over that work and maybe fill in a few gaps, and she can get back on top of it. So that makes her feel very proud. And, then we talk about filling up her cup with positives, rather than looking at the unknown
Okay.
negatives.
Okay. So can you take me through, I'm really interested to know more about and, you know, get like a better sort of picture of what happens in your home in the morning before school, particularly on the days that she feels like she can't go. So would you be able to maybe just sort of like pretend that I was to give you a video camera and that you were to say attach the video camera to your belt for 24 hours and that video camera was going to follow you around and film everything that was happening in your home? And could we just pretend for a moment that Lily wakes up in the morning and says, Mum, I'm not going to school today. Would you be able to maybe take me through what she might do and also take me through how you might react to what she's saying and just what that interaction looks like between the two of you?
Well, I'll be up at 6 doing meditation and some yoga or qigong and a cup of tea, and that will give me some time to have my own self-care time. And generally speaking, she'll probably be up by about 6:45, and she'll have a shower and work out what she wants to take for fresh snacks for school, and have breakfast, and then we'll do some exercises together. So if she doesn't spring out of bed, then she'll generally say to me, oh, Mummy, I need to sleep for another half an hour. And I usually know that something's happened, like she hasn't slept well or yawning a lot. I can generally tell physically.
Okay.
Or whether it's something emotional or just anxiety.
Okay. And do you feel like you're able to get her to school after a bit, like you said before, you know, sometimes she gets there at lunchtime, or do you feel like there's some days that you can't get her there?
It's not so much anymore because she's really back at school full time, or 4 days a week now.
Okay.
Total.
Okay.
But if I think it's anxiety sometimes and she's got something important on and that she really wants to go to, I'll make some jokes and tickle her and you know, make her really laugh it out, and then get the blood circulating as such, and then that often works too.
Okay. When she's got something on that she wants to do at school that she's feeling worried about or feeling anxious about, how about you ask her, what is it about that activity that is important to her? So what would be an example of something she might have on at school that she might get anxious about?
It could be just a positive, wonderful experience that she doesn't want to miss out on. And she just wants to make sure that she's there on time and she's prepared. And that can make her anxious too. So
Okay.
It's not necessarily something negative or unknown. She really wants to go, she wants to do it, she's really positive, but she'll find anxiety about getting there on time, and she'll be up at 5 o'clock.
Wow.
You know, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So there's anxiety on both sides.
Well, I haven't heard you say that when she's feeling anxious or overwhelmed at school, she has to come home. You said that she'll go, the teacher will organise for her to go like to the library or to wellbeing. I'm not hearing that she's not able to stay at school, which is really, really fabulous. I'm actually hearing a lot of strengths in both you and in Lily. And I'm wondering if it would be more empowering to say to her, you can get through this. I know that you can get through feeling worried or feeling anxious or feeling overwhelmed. And I know that nothing bad is going to happen to you. You have everything you need to get yourself through feeling like this. You have felt overwhelmed or anxious or worried at school before, and nothing bad has happened to you from feeling like that. And you have been able to get yourself through it. And even when she has stayed in the classroom and she's felt like it was noisy, you said that she felt overwhelmed, but I didn't actually hear you tell me that anything really bad happened to her as a result of staying in the classroom. She just didn't feel comfortable.
Oh, she'll come home and cry
Will she?
sometimes,
Okay.
but at the same time, she'll feel proud of herself, but it's just a little bit too much.
Yeah. Okay. And look, I think it's really fabulous that she's able to talk to you about what's going on. And I was thinking about that before when you said, like, in the mornings, you know, if she's very tired and the day before has taken a lot of energy from her, then that has a bit of a flow-on effect to the next day. So I think if she can come home and the same day talk to you about how her day's been, or maybe do some drawing.
Her, Dr. Black, that she's able to take those feelings with her. So it's acknowledging them. So
Yeah.
it's acknowledging them, that they are present, but she's still going to go with them and see how she can go and see what she can overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? She doesn't even have to overcome them. She can just let them be without having to try to do anything to get rid of them. And so, you know, one thing that you could say to her is, Lily, when you go into the classroom and you sit down, and if you're feeling anxious, you can say, "Hi, anxiety, it's great to see you. Take a seat because the teacher's going to start teaching. So sit down, anxiety, because I'm ready to learn." And if anxiety or feeling worried or overwhelmed shows up during the day, she can just notice it and say hi to it each time it's there. Just acknowledge that it's there. And like, you can be really playful. You can be like silly and a bit funny. You know, when you suggest these things to Lily, one thing that I really like to say is something like, "Hi, anxiety, it's great to see you. I love the way you've done your hair today," or "You're looking really fabulous today."
Yes, I like that. Putting a positive on it.
Well, it's
or not, a brightness of feeling.
And it's about not feeling so frightened of those feelings, and not feeling like we have to get rid of them or we can't do things just because we feel worried or anxious. So she can take her anxiety to school. And like, do you drive her to school or does she walk to school?
She loves to walk to school.
Okay. So when she's leaving home in the morning, and if she's feeling anxious, she can say, "Come on, anxiety, let's go. It's time to go to school now. We don't want to be late."
Brilliant.
And she can just imagine anxiety walking along beside her, and she might have a bit of a giggle.
So there's an attachment to the anxiety. Is that what you're...
Exactly. You've got it. That's what it's about. It's about letting go of how tightly we're holding on to those thoughts and feelings. And often when we feel very overwhelmed or we feel frightened by how we feel, often we're holding on to those thoughts and feelings like very tightly. It's as though our thoughts and feelings are stuck to us. But when we can start just welcoming at those thoughts and feelings and making some room for them and not trying to get rid of them, just letting them be there and just acknowledging that they're actually separate from us. So it's like there's Lily and there's the anxiety. Lily is not the anxiety. Lily and anxiety are separate, and she's not anxious all the time. But sometimes anxiety shows up and other times it's not there. And when it shows up, she can.
We've had to play around with those.
Okay. All right. I did just forward through a bit of it just because we are running over time. Okay. So my book is available as a book, an ebook on Kindle, and there's an audio version as well. Just resources if you're wanting to learn more about ACT, the Association for Contextual Behavioural Science, which is the World ACT Association. Just put some books there if you're working with young children. Some parenting books, ACT Made Simple, Stuff That's Loud, which is a really, really fabulous book for teenagers with OCD. And if you'd love it if you'd stay in contact with me. I have a Facebook professional page, I have an Instagram page. I provide supervision by Zoom if you want supervision with me, or if you want further training, just go onto my website and fill out the contact form, and then I'll add you to my mailing list and send you updates for online training that I'm giving. Okay, I'll just stop the screen share. All right. Has anyone got any questions for me, or any comments, any questions about the parenting video? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, so Kristen just put in another really, really great comment. I like the way you clearly communicated that it's not about hiding the anxiety. Absolutely. And so we don't have to do anything to hide our thoughts and feelings. In that video, the parent was, sort of, was allowing Lily to stay home when she didn't feel that she could go to school. And so what I was really trying to do was to teach the parent that Lily could go to school even when she felt anxious, and she could take her anxiety with her. Okay. Thank you so much for attending. You've been just such a great group, and your comments have been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Black, for speaking today. And some of us are hearing about ACT for the first time, and I'm sure a lot of us have already done trainings and read articles. So we have a mix. So I hope this was informative to everybody. And thank you again.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Kristen, for organising this, and Manhattan Psychology Group. It's just been really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.